Susie, welcome to Multispective. I am so excited to have you on air with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah. Um, recently we've been doing quite a few cult-based stories on air. We've done some on Jehovah's Witnesses. We've done some on, a variety of different ones. But I feel like this one is one that has spread so wide and so far out that, people all over the world at this point, um, you'll find people practicing this kind of all over the world, and some may confuse this for religion. Some may argue that, hey, this is not a cult, how can we label it this? So I'm really, really excited to share this on air, and sort of like raise awareness on sort of the actual insides of what is actually happening within this. So, and you yourself were raised in it, so hearing it firsthand, I think, would be really, really powerful for our listeners. So why don't you start off just telling us a little bit about where your story begins?
My story, I was born and raised into Mormonism. And in fact, early in the very beginning of the church, Joseph Smith was the founder in the mid 1800s and claimed to have found the Book of Mormon via an angel telling him that the golden plates were hid in the hill Cumorah. And he translated these plates with ancient Egyptian language and translated it into English. And the religion went on for years, and my forefathers were pioneers that supported and sacrificed their lives for the church in the trek to Salt Lake City. So my great grandfather, Stillman Pond, had 8 children and a wife that he buried on the way to the trek west to Salt Lake City. So when I speak of Mormonism being at my very roots, it really is. And I was born and raised into it. And my parents were very, very faithful, very committed. And I married in the temple just as I was told to do, and raised my 6 children Mormon. And it wasn't until probably around the age of 42, 43 that I began allowing myself for the first time to begin to question whether what was happening within the church was truth.
Right. Wow. So, I mean, it sounds like, but there is like a really, really strong history of here. Do you know like the numbers of like how big this is today?
The church, I could look it up really quick. I could look it
Yeah.
up. I've got my
Yeah.
iPad here, but millions,
I'd be
millions.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'd be curious about this because I mean, I myself have met people here who have practiced this or believe in this, and maybe not so religiously practicing it as in knocking on doors and trying to convert, but really, really do believe very strongly in the faith, in the beliefs of it. So yeah, I'd be
Right.
curious to sort of know,
Yes.
or like how many churches there are and how widespread is, and how far outside of the US have they also sort of expanded to?
Right. Well, I know I have a son who served his mission in Estonia. So, of course, when the boys in the church are 19, they're sent all over the world to spread the gospel. But right now, the church, as of December 31st, 2023, the church membership was 17,255,394, according to um, what it says on here. And yeah, so I mean, 17 million, and they've lost members, you know. So
Yeah,
it's
imagine that.
in every country. I believe the only country, and I'm just going off the top of my head just from where missionaries are sent, but typically, obviously, they're never sent to North Korea. But there are some missionaries, I believe, there are still sent to South Korea. So, but it is worldwide. And I would love to tell you how many temples too. I mean, have you
Yeah.
seen the Mormon temples? Have
They're,
you,
yeah, like extravagant.
extravagant. And you can only
Yeah.
imagine, I mean, it costs billions of dollars to build these temples. But right
Mm.
now, I mean, I would just be really curious to know how many, because they are building so many. And the interesting thing about the temples, do you know what goes on in the temples?
Not exactly, no. Do
Okay,
tell.
so marriages are solemnized, is what they're called. The sealings occur. That is the only ordinance done for you in your life, for you yourself. Every time that you go back to the temple, you are doing temple work for, in proxy for someone who is dead, who used to live on the earth. So the purpose of that is to ensure that every person who has ever lived on this earth receives the opportunity to accept the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as truth, that every knee shall bow, every tongue confess that Jesus is the Christ, and that they will be given the opportunity to join the church. And so it's purported that even Hitler's temple work has been done. So I mean, when I was a young girl, when I was 12, I started going to the temple, and we would do the ordinance of baptism for the dead in the temple. So we would do it for and in behalf of someone who had previously died. So that's why it was called baptisms for the dead. But everything we do in the temple is for someone who is no longer living, so that they have the opportunity in the realm that they're in, which we call the hereafter, or
Hmm.
before the judgment, where everyone waits so that they can accept the gospel. So yeah, because the
Wow.
church, and the interesting thing is that we were told we were Mormon, right? So our prophets told us we were Mormon. We used to sing songs as little kids about how excited we were to be Mormon. And now the new prophet of the church has decided that he doesn't like the name Mormonism, and he wants people to be called the church, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So it's really funny. You'll see this online where the members of the church get really angry for being called Mormon. They have been told it's a nickname and that it's not a nice nickname. But my generation, we were taught that we were Mormon and that we were happy to be
Mormon.
Mormon, and we should be proud of it. And so that's one of the things that has changed.
And I wonder whether that's because like the name Mormonism has become slightly tainted, and the more
Yes,
people are talking about it and people are coming out, so they just
mhm.
rebrand it, called the LDS, and just
Yeah.
make it something new.
Yes.
Along with the name, did they actually make any internal changes as well in terms of what they expect or what they believe or what? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because for the first 42 years of my life, we were always told the church will never change. It is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And if you expect the church to change, do not hold out for it, because it will not. And so, for instance, here's a perfect example of how it is changing. We were expected when we went to the temple that we would wear sacred underwear. And this underwear covered like from here, like this. I wouldn't have been able to wear this when I was Mormon. I would have had to like have that covered. But
Right.
it covered here and all the way down, covering cleavage, and it went down to our knees. And we had to wear that under our clothes. And we were told that it was never going to change. And the funny thing is, guess what they've just recently done in the last 6 months? Now you can have
They've
porn
changed
shoulders.
that. Really?
Yeah, like
Wow.
I used to get, if I ever showed my shoulders, everybody would know I wasn't living the gospel, because they would automatically be able to look at me and say, she's not wearing her garments. And that was a covenant. That was a commandment to wear our sacred underwear. And it was to remind us that they had sacred symbols on them, like over the breast and navel and knee. And those were
Mm,
to remind us of all of the covenants that we made in the temple. So,
right.
and we were told if we ever
Wow.
left, we would forget everything that we've learned in the temple. And I've not forgotten it. that
You remember it clear as day. If
Yeah,
anything, you're able to express it way
yeah.
more and better
And
than
the things
before.
that we learned, we were told that we would need after we died in order to be able to be brought back into the presence of God. And they were secret handshakes that we were taught, and secret chants that we were taught. And we were told never to divulge this to anyone. If we talked to anyone about this, we would be cast out. And we were also given a new name. So my new name, I was told if I ever uttered it, I would be cast out. And so I knew my name, and my husband could know my name, but I was not allowed to know his name, because in the temple, women covenanted to God. I mean, excuse me, we covenanted to our husbands, and our husbands covenanted to God. So
Right.
I wasn't even worthy enough, being completely worthy to covenant to God. I had to covenant to my
Right.
husband and obey him.
And I'm guessing that that sort of like applied in every aspect, in every
Mhm.
decision making power, in every kind of like owning of property or owning of anything
Yes.
had to be through your husband, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and he always got the final say no matter what. He was considered the priesthood leader of the home, and that we should never argue with the priesthood, those were direct keys from God. And we as women were not allowed to have the priesthood, but we were teased and told, you can hold the priesthood by hugging him, by having him. You can hold
Wow.
the priesthood, but you can't hold the priesthood. Yeah. And, when women would talk about how unfair it seemed, we were very much chastised, and we were never allowed or permitted to question, because that was considered apostasy. You were considered an apostate if you ever questioned anything. And so
Right.
you learned that it was not righteous. It didn't look good. It was sinful to question. And as the internet came about and people started learning about the history, we were never taught that Joseph Smith, the founder of the church, was a polygamist. We didn't know that. We knew that he taught
Mm.
polygamy later
Right.
on, but we didn't know he himself was married to 40 women, some of them being under the age of 14, even 12. And some were mothers and daughters. This guy,
Right.
and the church they absolutely would not confirm
Divulge.
that. They just said
Right.
that is considered anti-Mormon literature. Don't listen to it. And they just assumed we'd never really find out. But now they're having to explain it. And it's interesting watching them explain it away, because they
Right.
can't hide from it. But they never told us.
I have so many questions regarding what we've just talked about. But I do
Yeah.
want to go back first to the idea of secrecy, having a
Hmm.
secret name, having a secret handshake. What do you think is the idea behind that? Why do you think? Because I'm trying to think, like a lot of cults, they do have a lot of secrets that they keep within, and it's sort of like this is a privilege that you get to have being in. Do you think that this is something that increases loyalty or increases this bond between member and church?
Hmm.
What's the idea behind secrets?
So the idea behind it is only worthy members can go to the temple. Not every member, not every Mormon can go to the temple. You have to go through 2 interviews to be considered worthy. Now, with that being said, we're told if we do not go to the temple, we can't be with our families forever. We will not be able to be with our families after death. So there's this pressure that we have to be temple worthy in order to have the blessings of exaltation. And it's just, it's mind blowing that you have to go through 2 priesthood holders, the bishop and the state president, who ask you a slew of questions, including things like, do you pay 10% to the church? If you don't pay 10% to the church for tithing, you are not temple worthy. You are not allowed to go. But these secret handshakes and all of that, nobody tells you you're going to do it before you get there. And going into it as a 20-year-old girl, I was shocked. I felt uncomfortable. I felt it was very voodoo-y, like culty. And I remember thinking, this is what we do. This is the temple that they were telling me about, just was spiritual and wonderful and amazing. And I have to wear white robes, and that goes deeper too, because before you get your underwear, you have to actually remove your clothing, and you wear just this sheer shield. No one told me I was going to be taking my clothes off in the temple. It was all weird to me. And I
Yeah.
think your natural instinct tells you it's not normal. These things are not normal. But you see everyone around you doing it, all the doctors and lawyers from church, all of the businessmen that are so successful, everybody you babysit for that's in there. And you think, well, maybe there's something wrong with me. Why do I think this is weird? I guess this is what
Mm.
we do. My mom and dad have been doing this forever. And I guess this is what we have to do to have eternal life. And yeah, but with the secret handshakes and the new name, I think that the purpose of that is to, in a way, change your identity, change you,
Mm.
taking you from who you are to who they want you to be. My name, by the way, and I don't think I'm going to be struck down, is Claudia. I,
Right. And that makes sense to strip you away from who you
mhm,
are. It's taking you further away from your idea of self. And now you're
right,
now a part of something else that is
mhm,
bigger than you. And you have
right.
to sort of accept that fate. So I completely understand that.
Yeah.
Um,
And people, oh, go ahead.
yeah, please,
Oh,
please,
I was
please.
going to say, and the purpose too in keeping families together, which is so interesting, is that if your family doesn't have, if someone in your family doesn't have a temple recommend, they can't go to your wedding. They can't, like, I couldn't go to my daughter's wedding. I wasn't permitted into the temple to see her get married because I didn't have a temple recommend. I had left the church. So no non-members are permitted in for the even the living ordinances of weddings. And so people want to attend their child's wedding, and so they will do all the things that they have to so that they're able to be there. And they don't want everybody around them to know why they don't have a temple recommend. Like, they're going to think I'm bad if they don't see me at the wedding. If I can't go to my own child's wedding, I'm going to be bad. So it's like this social pressure that's attached to it.
Right. Yeah. Can you walk me through your relationship with your husband, being taught that, your husband was the step towards, towards God? How did that sort of impact your relationship with your husband?
I I was married for 22 years. I'm no longer married to him, but I went along with it. It made sense to me because of the way I was raised. In my home, my dad ruled. Whatever my dad said went, and we were terrified of the guy, actually. But when I married my husband, we I think that what made our marriage strong, the only thing we had in common was the church. We were both very faithful and believed it wholeheartedly. And so that was the basis of the strength of our relationship. And honestly, that was fine for me. I went along for years where whatever he said, I went along with. I can honestly say about 6 years into it, I started really struggling with the dynamics of it, and went to counseling and started learning to have a little bit of my own voice. But at the end of the day, I always knew what he said went. And I about 6 years in, I started struggling with it, and I would fight against it and remind myself I needed to be faithful. I don't agree with him. I have to do what I'm told, in the sense, like, an example is his mom always had the holidays at her house, and I was never permitted to have a holiday with my children at my house. We went to her house. There was no question. If I wanted to just make my own meal for the kids and have my own traditions with them, no, we're going to my mom's. And after so many years, it really started to affect me. And I would say it was around the time that our fourth child was born and she passed away, was when I started to kind of rebel against him a little bit.
Um, can you tell me a little bit more about the roles within? So, from what I know, men were required to go out, travel around, preach, try to get people to join. What was it like for women? What were you required to do on a day-to-day basis?
So we were raised to be homemakers, that we were raised that we would be, our most important role in life was to be a mother, to have children. That was our whole identity. Um, there were two church schools. There was Brigham Young University and there was Rick's College. And we could go, but most people knew we probably wouldn't graduate. We probably wouldn't have a career, and it wasn't expected for us to have a career. So when young men are 19, they're expected to go on a mission for the church. The young women, they can go, but their primary purpose is to get married and have children. So they give them until 21 to go on a mission if they want to, but they don't want them to pass up the opportunity to get married and have children. And that is our primary purpose. And if we desired anything outside of that, it was pretty shameful. I had ideas when I was younger of things I wanted to do, and I was right away kind of kicked in the pants by my parents, like, you're not doing that. That's not what a member of the church does. We just don't do that. And I wanted to be a journalist, and nope, you're not doing that. Mm-mm.
And would you say that that was like the case for basically everyone around you? Or did you ever come across or see any woman out there that fought for their rights and actually managed to?
No, I didn't. Everyone in church the women were very submissive. It was very rare back then. I think it is different now. I think things are changing now for sure. So a lot of younger people, like in their 20s or 30s, would watch this, or they would look at me and say, she's full of crap. That's not taught. But that is what we were taught, and it's well documented. And we were expected to have children. We were also told we should not curtail the number of children that we had, meaning have as many as you can, multiply and replenish the earth. So people would have a tendency to judge one another. Like if somebody decided they only wanted 1 or 2 kids, selfish. They just get labeled selfish. And
Wow.
we were expected to have large families. And we were even counseled by the prophet that we should not wait to have children. Even if we were in school, even if we couldn't afford to, we should not delay we should not delay the start of our families. And so we were told, like right after we got married, we should start to have children. And I look at my daughter now, she's been married 9 years, no children, not interested. And I love it. I'm like, how cool is that? How amazing would
Yeah.
that be to like just plan your life out the way you wanted
Mm,
it and make
right.
decisions for yourself like that? How amazing. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was not given those choices. And sometimes that's the hardest part of it, is to look back at that and think, I was given those choices. I was in so deep that I didn't understand they were choices.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of criticism if you did not live this certain way.
Right.
And yeah,
What were some of the ways, though, that they were keeping people in check, in track, making sure that people were not
Mm,
deviating from, yeah.
yeah, that's a great question too. We were required to have an interview with the bishop once a year. So it was called tithing settlement. It's done at the end of the year. He brings in families and he looks over your what you've contributed for tithing, and he asks you if it's an honest tithe. And sometimes they will question you and say, "Oh, you paid $8,000 this year. You only made 80,000, or whatever it is." So sometimes you'll be questioned on that. So they have tithing settlement at the end of the year, and then again, in order to be able to go to the temple, you have to go through a really rigid interview with your bishop and the stake president, and that has to be done once a year. So that temple recommend is only good for 1 year. So every year you have to come before him, and he asks you questions like, do you pay 10%? Do you keep the word of wisdom, which means no smoking, no drinking? The other one is, do you keep the law of chastity? So that's a big one, because you're not supposed to have sex before you go to the temple. You're not supposed to do anything naughty like that. And so it gives you an opportunity for the bishop to really question. And they didn't just stop with that. Sometimes they would drill you. Like if you said, yeah, I've had a little bit of a problem with this or that. In my day, masturbation or pornography, those were considered not keeping the law of chastity. So if you were to be honest and tell them, I'm doing this or I'm doing that, you wouldn't get your temple recommend. And you couldn't take the sacrament. So then everybody around you can see that you're not taking the sacrament, and they look and they notice and they wonder why, and rumors start. But yeah, once a year, you've got that interview with the bishop that you've got to go to, and the stake president, and you are asked the bazillion really, really personal, intimate questions. And I'm a firm believer that that is why so many members of the church have learned to lie and deny, because they're afraid of telling the truth. They're terrified if they tell the truth, everyone will know. So, in my opinion, I believe that the church really genuinely teaches people how to lie. And I think that's sad.
Right. Because in a sense, then what ends up happening is just like people that are rebelling, that are not actually following the faith. They're just doing actually what they want. Man, that's really crazy. I mean, to think that like this was like your life, right? Like this is something that
Yeah.
you really lived.
Yeah.
How do you contend now with the idea of like what are people going to think? Do you feel like you've sort of somewhat overcome that hurdle of like, acting based on other people's thoughts? Or do you still that still matters to you a lot?
Well, it's been a long time since I've left the church now. We're going on 13 years. But I would say in the very beginning, it was one of the most challenging things I've ever done. It was one of the most lonely things. And I had been excommunicated from the church because I believe in honesty. And I had made some mistakes in my marriage when it was failing, and the marriage had been not good for a long time. And I had never been with anyone else in my life except my husband. I did everything right. And when I realized that, my husband's just not that into me, I think I fantasized and always dreamed about what it would be like to be with someone who cared about me and just absolutely um, adored me. And I didn't plan to have an affair. I just decided that I was going to start bodybuilding and focusing on me since I couldn't really control the fact that my husband really wasn't that into me. So that was the route that I took. And the really unfortunate part was I did not realize how vulnerable I was. I never would have wanted to cheat on my husband. It's never a plan I would make. But I was very vulnerable, and I purposely chose a trainer that I was not attracted to, that was my same height. He kind of looked like a monkey a little bit because of all the anabolics. And I'm
Right.
like, oh yeah, this guy's safe. He's
Yeah.
he's safe. And after 3 years of training with him, he became like my best friend. He was like my pal. And and then before you know it, like he's sexy. He looks good. And then, the first time I kissed him, I thought, oh, what am I doing? Like I am breaking the rules. I'm gonna get in trouble. And one thing leads to another. And I find myself in the bishop's office with so much shame and guilt, confessing because I couldn't live with myself. And an affair is never a good thing anyway, whether you're in the church or out of the church, it's never
Mhm.
honest. But I had always lived an honest life and it really affected me. And I wanted to repent of my sins, even though I was really drawn to my sins. I was like, okay, this is
Yeah.
something I want to do, but I'm not supposed to. So I've got to confess. And I did go in and tell my bishop, and that was hellacious, to say the least.
Mm. Right. Tell me, walk me through what happened.
So when I told the bishop, it had been going on for a couple of months, and I told my trainer, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to tell my husband. I'm going to have to confess. And the first thing that I did, I mean, it was so hard to even utter what I had done because all I could think of was hell, fire, brimstone, never seeing my children again, never seeing my daughter who had passed away. And that was the thing that really, I wanted to see her again. I wanted to be with my children. I actually really believed it. I think so many members of the church don't actually believe it as truth, but I believed it to my core and I knew what I was doing was wrong and I wanted to make it right. And so when I went into him, I had gone to a counselor first, and the counselor told me, she said, she was Mormon, and she said, you're going to have to tell your husband. And I said, I know. And she said, because you are covenant, you make your covenants to him. And she said that she worked with men who had cheated on their wives, and they didn't have to confess to their wives because they covenanted to God. And when
Right.
I heard that, it kind of pissed me off, actually.
Right.
It really pissed me off because all I could think is, has my husband done this to me? Like our marriage isn't
Right.
good. Has this happened and he doesn't have to tell me? But nonetheless, I wanted to see my daughter who'd passed away. I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to make it right. And I was willing to, I knew I'd probably be excommunicated from the church. But when I told the bishop, he had me tell my husband. My husband wanted me to tell no one, and he wanted us to work on it. And he said he would do everything that he could. I mean, after the initial losing his mind and like, I'm gonna, like, of course,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
but he didn't want a divorce. He wanted to stay married, and I really didn't want to stay married. I didn't want to be with my trainer, but the marriage had been dead for so long. So we gave it another run, and I found myself a year later in the same place with someone else. And I said to myself, is being a cheater, once you're a cheater, you're always a cheater? Because I don't want to be that. Why am I
Mm.
doing this? I'm doing this because my marriage is miserable. I need to get out of it. So the
Mm.
first time I was disfellowshipped by the church, which means that I could still keep my blessings, but I was disfellowshipped because my husband wanted to stay married to me. So it depended upon what he wanted done. If he wanted me
Oh,
excommunicated, I would have been gone. Disfellowshipped, I was just like on probation.
right.
Well, the second time I did it, um, oh, they were done with me. And I filed for divorce and left him. I wasn't going to let him talk. I don't even know why he wanted me to stay there. Why would you want to be with somebody who cheated on you? You know, but
Mm.
he just did not want his marriage broken up because of the blessings, the blessings that he had because of me. I was his golden ticket to the celestial kingdom. And that's why there's a
Right.
lot of babysitting between couples when you're in the church, because you're their golden ticket. They can't get to heaven without you. And so rather than being a partner, you babysit each other. And yeah, it was after that everybody in the community knew I'd been excommunicated. It was a really big deal to go through an excommunication. And you sit before, in my case, 4 men who ask you detailed questions about which orifice it went in, how many times, how many times you've had sex, with how many people, did you like it? Very graphic questions. And I answered every one of them honestly. And I was told that the Holy Ghost would no longer be with me. The Holy Ghost is what they tell you is the still small voice. It's really your intuition, but they tell
Right.
you that it's a blessing that the church gives to you that you will lose. And I walked out of there, and I remember thinking, I, I still have the Holy Ghost. What the hell? And I thought, oh, wait, oh, that's me. I'm the Holy Ghost. I'm the, and it was just like, I didn't know how I was going to survive it because it affected my children. Everybody knew that they had a terrible mother, that their mother was breaking up their family. And I think my oldest at the time was 17. And my youngest was probably 6 or 7. So everyone at school was talking about it because we had a large Mormon community, and everyone within the community because everybody knows the Mormons there.
Right. Can you walk me through how was your relationship with your kids after that then?
Mm. It was hard. It was really hard. They were very, very angry with me. And I remember having to tell myself, they're angry with me for good reason. They have every reason to be angry with me. And it's unfortunate that they have to know the details of our marriage and the demise of our marriage. It's very unfortunate. But I need to own it. I need to bravely own it and show them that we all make mistakes. This is a huge one. Um, I had to find it within myself to not hate myself, because in my religion, I was always taught like shame would overwhelm you. And I had to relearn what the nature of God really is, because I thought,
Mm.
there's not a God that would do to me what those men did to me. He's not like that. Like, I
Right.
would never talk to my kids like that. So I started talking to myself the way I would talk to my children. Like, Susie, yes, you made a mistake. Yes, it was horrible. You didn't mean to hurt anyone. You were hurting inside. You need to work through this hurt. It will be okay. You will survive. And I started to believe in myself. And that's what my trainer taught me. Was he was the first person in my life to believe in me. And so I started learning those positive things. Even though he was way far out of my life, he really affected the way I learned to speak to myself and the way that I learned to survive what I was going through. And I also realized, I started realizing the church wasn't true. I just thought it just wouldn't, they wouldn't do this to somebody. They wouldn't ostracize somebody. I mean, it's like they're scared of me. It's like they are so terrified that I'm going to be a negative influence on the other women of the church, and they're terrified of me, and that's what it boils down to. And I started seeing it for what it was, and I started thinking, I'm not a bad person. I'm a person that made a really bad mistake. How am I going to figure out in my life how I'm not going to make that mistake ever again? And I thought, well, I'll never be in a loveless relationship. I'll walk away before it becomes loveless, because now I know I can. But it's scary. You'd never been on my own my whole life.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I was gonna just say this because like I think you were the first episode that I've done where an individual has left and been excommunicated from a cult without having that awareness of like, hey, I'm in a cult. The
Yeah,
episodes that I've done previously, they've been somehow made aware of the fact that this is a cult that they're in,
yeah.
and then chosen to exit with that
Yes.
knowledge.
Yes,
So
that's a very interesting take.
right. So that's kind of what I wanted to know. How did it start to sort of dawn on you that actually what was happening inside was not true, was a cult? Was it from reading books about it, reading, other testimonials, reviews of people, honest stories, listening to people's stories? Or was it just sort of realizing that so much of what they've said is not true? You still have these wonders that, that they've kind of been
Yeah,
holding over you.
I'm so glad. This question is phenomenal. This is such an important, like, I am so impressed with you that like you're able that you, because I've never been asked this question. I've
Oh,
been asked
okay.
most questions many times. This is a very good question. Um, I think, yeah, I did not realize it was a cult. I just began to start thinking, is this how God would treat me? For starters. And then and I was going through my divorce and everything, and my husband wasn't paying me child support. And and that is one of the questions. You have to be paying child support in order to go to the temple. Well, he wasn't. And when my daughter got married, they were going to let him go to the temple and not me. And I was like, look, I've got a court order. This guy isn't paying me. And they said to me, he is the more righteous parent. He can go. And I thought, that's not what the rules are. The rules are, if you're not worthy, you don't go. You don't stack up who's better than who. This is
Mm.
not okay. And they let him go. He went to my daughter's wedding, and I was not permitted. And then I had another relationship after him. I had started dating one of the high priest's sons, who was 28 when I was 43. So,
Wow.
so, so I start dating him, and we lived together. So it was pretty obvious what was going on. And I would get called in the bishop's office after I was excommunicated. After I was excommunicated, they wanted to come. They wanted me to talk to them about it, and I was like, no, I'm not.
Oh,
I
I
don't owe
don't owe
you
you anything.
anything.
Right,
Yeah, I don't owe
exactly.
you anything. But the guy cheated on me. He cheated on me multiple times. He was still kept his membership in the church. They never got rid of him. He was dating a porn star who he impregnated and married, and he was able to baptize her into the church. Never got excommunicated. So to me, I thought, you know, the church has always told me that the church is perfect and the people aren't. Well, the people aren't, and neither is the church. This is
Hmm.
not real, because I told the truth. I believed it to my core. I lived it. I didn't care what happened to me. I told them exactly what they wanted, and they got rid of me because that's what you have to do. You have to lie to
Hmm.
stay in. And that's when it occurred to me, and that's bull crap. That's crap.
Hmm.
It
Right.
occurred to me around the time my daughter got married, where I no longer had that guilt or that fear of leaving. Yes, the guilt and the shame that would require personal penance and making myself a better person for the mistakes that I made and things like that.
Right.
But oh no. Yeah, no. I didn't even read the anti-Mormon literature, anything like that. I was just like, "Oh, I'm done. I'm so done with this." So
Hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah,
this
I
is
mean that
bull crap.
That's the thing, though, right? Because it's like, in most religions, even cults, they talk about how your every thought is being monitored, not monitored, but like it is
Yes.
being recorded, it is understood, it
Yes.
is heard by the higher powers. So it's not only about your actions, but it's your very thoughts. But over here, it's quite the opposite. It's like it doesn't matter. Just you need to keep a squeaky clean
Yeah.
look. We need to
Just the
look
image.
good on the outside. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And that was one of the things that they said to me when they excommunicated me. They said, "You are an embarrassment to this community." Because they knew that everybody knew about my affair in the community. So, and they knew that my husband wanted me excommunicated. He was mad with good reason. But they were concerned about the squeaky clean image in the community. And everybody knew, like, I was out. I was out, and
Yeah.
people were not kind to me. And they would talk to my children at church and just tell them, "We feel so bad for you that your mom is not a member of the church and that she's not living the gospel." Who does that to children? Who talks to their children
Yeah.
about their parent? I think that was
Right.
so disturbing to do to my children. And one of the things that I learned with my relationship with them, going back to your question about that, was um, I what there was a movie, and in the movie it said, "Your job is to love your children. It is not their job to love you." And I loved that. It like rang true to me. I thought, yeah, if my kids never love me again, they have good reason. But I will love them. I will shower my love on them. I will show them I love them. Now that their
Mm,
dad is not in this house talking about what a terrible person I am and verbally abusing me in front of them and encouraging it from them, we're
mm,
in an environment where we're kind to each other. We love each other. I can shower them
mm,
with just so much attention and so much encouragement, and create a positive environment. And I remember just feeling so free with my children that I had the patience with them, that when they would say, "You broke up our family and we lost our home," I would say, "I did. I am so sorry. I did not want to break up our family." And then I would, as time went on and as they would start to notice things, they would say, "Yeah, Dad didn't talk very nicely to you, did he?" I'm like, "No." And we talk to each other kindly. Isn't it a good feeling? And they would start to notice things. I have a great relationship with all of my adult children to this day, and they have every reason in the world to hate me, and they love me. And they are the ones that have taught me unconditional love, for sure.
wow. I mean, I could feel that as well, like in our email correspondence and stuff, like the grace. I was thinking about this even before our interview, like the number of times you've just shown so much grace with
Oh,
having to like reschedule the
of
interviews, or
course.
all of these little things. I know that they seem little, but to a lot of people it can be like, "Oh, this is frustrating," but you would just like, "Sure, no problem, like, let's do it. I'm just happy to do this." And to me, I don't know. It was such a game changer to sort of see that, because I just felt so calm and just so
Oh,
like,
I'm
"Oh,
so
okay,
glad.
like this is okay. Like it'll be okay." Because I know sometimes I can get a little bit like anxious or worried if I know if I'm having to like reschedule more than once, especially that like I don't want to put someone else at such an inconvenience. But when you're kind of putting that out there, that kindness
Right.
out there, it makes a really, really big difference,
It
to the
it
other
does,
person.
and I think that one of those things, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much. One of those things for me was learning to be patient with myself and realizing how many times in my life I've messed up. Like, not everybody has an affair and not everybody messes up their family the way I did. And I've
Mm,
had to forgive myself for that. And so, when I was cheated on, that was something that I had to learn. I didn't look at it as karma. I remember when I was being cheated on thinking, "Okay, I understand that he's cheating on me, and this has everything to do with him and his pain. And it doesn't have anything to do with me, or not anything, but it has more to do with what's going on with him, because I remember what that felt like. But equally, it did hurt, but
right.
offering him the grace, because remembering that if I truly believe that I can change, I need to be able to truly believe that someone else can change."
Have you used, like, ever since you've been out, have you um tried to convince, say, your kids or anyone, your family members in that's within about what the reality is? Have you ever tried to
No.
convince any of them out? No.
Mm-mm.
So
Oh,
are they still
no,
all very much members?
no.
Oh, okay.
So my,
Okay.
so like all of my siblings have left, all three of them. All of my kids are out. And I would never encourage anyone to leave, ever.
Right.
I would never go on someone's page on TikTok and say, your church is garbage. It's a cult. I don't. Truth is, truth is consistent. Truth is real. Truth is powerful. And when I told the truth about what I had done and owned my mistakes and told the gritty details, it gave me power. Like, man, there's some power in truth. Like, truth is it's the funniest, and truth is powerful. And
Yeah.
you know truth when you hear it. And so it was just like, look, you know what? If they believe that the church is true, and the church makes them a better person, like I did for the majority of my life. I felt like it made me a better person. I'm happy for them. And they will come to a point where they will either continue to embrace it, or they will find that whatever works for them works for them. And I wouldn't disapprove of them if they were still in the church, or approve them only because they were in the church. Being in the church, everything was very conditional. I mean, there are a lot of people whose entire families cut them off when they leave. They're done with them. And I knew
Right.
if I had done that 20, 30 years ago, my parents probably would have cut me off. Um, but it's been interesting because my 83-year-old parents are still very, very much in. And then my boys, after they came home from their mission, they also didn't go to my daughter's wedding, which is highly unusual because they have been endowed and they're considered temple worthy after they get back from their missions. And I noticed that neither one of them went. And I just kept my lip zipped. I didn't say anything, but everybody knows why they're not there. You know, they're not living the gospel. And that's like really bad in the Mormon church. Of course, no one ever called my sons in and asked them, you know, hey, what's going on? Give us the deets. I think it's much different for women. We're definitely kind of targeted with that.
Mm.
But yeah, my sons didn't go, and I'm sure that there was probably some sexual component. You know, they're 21, horny as hell. And so both of them, both my older sons and then my younger sons, my youngest son was the first one of my kids to leave the church. He was 9. And he said to me,
9.
9. He was 9. This kid is brilliant. He is. And he looked at me. It was right after my daughter's wedding. He looked at me and he goes, Mom, do you believe in God? And I said, yeah, I think I do. And he said, I don't. I'm atheist. My kids, you know, it just felt so empty to hear him say, I'm an atheist. And I said, what what makes you think you're an atheist? And he said, um, he said, Bill Nye the Science Guy. He says, what he says is true, Mom.
Wow. Bill
I
Nye.
was dying. And all my kids, the 9-year-old just, I don't believe in God. And everyone's like,
Oh my
and
gosh.
so he is so funny. He's 22 now. He is so adorable. But he, all the time, he'll just say, Mom, don't you think it was cool that I led us all astray? Like, yeah, I do, actually. Because it actually kind of gave me permission to go, yeah, you know, this is a
Yeah, it's
kid.
okay.
This
Yeah,
is a kid who
exactly.
sees through this garbage. And you know what?
Yeah.
He's smart, and he really is a smart kid. But
Yeah.
it kind of gave me permission, like, oh, Mom, you're not all that bad. You don't have to go. You know, it's
Right.
okay. You're not a terrible mom. I don't believe it either.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. No, that's great. That's amazing to see, like,
yeah,
someone who was literally raised into it, like, going through all the indoctrination and everything, and yet
yeah.
can watch one
I know.
episode and be like, nope, that's my truth, and
I
living it
know.
so openly and comfortably, right? It's
It's just
amazing.
so wonderful. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah. But, you know, and my kids are all very, they would never, they would in the same way, respect the church in the sense that anybody who truly believes it, they can live it any way that they want to live it. And what you see right now with social media and what you see like in Hollywood are these people that are kind of living like half Mormon, half not. Now, back in my day, you would have been kicked the heck out. They don't want to kick people out anymore. They're losing members in droves. They would never kick somebody out like me now. I kind of feel like the OG Mormon. It kind of makes me excited to go, yeah, I got
Yeah.
excommunicated. They asked me how many times and I didn't know because I just didn't know.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm the OG.
Yeah, exactly. Probably one of the last few.
And now they can show their porn shoulders. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my
exactly.
gosh, whatever.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh. So, one last question I do want to know a little bit more though. What was it like, kind of adjusting into the world outside of Mormonism, in terms of getting a job, in terms of, finding friends, in terms of your relationship with God after that? Where do you stand with
Mhm.
that as well now? Yeah.
You know, I I'm coming back to spirituality, and I would have to say it's not God. I cannot for the life of me imagine a man ruling me. It is very it's heart-wrenching. It's painful to my soul. And so I honestly honor Mother Earth. I mean, the earth is just so beautiful. And I find myself just honoring the world that we live in and knowing that there is a creator. There has to be a creator. But I think of her as like a sacred, compassionate, loving Mother Earth. And that's who I honor now. I it's nice to be able to decide for yourself what feels right for me, and that's also something I would never push on anybody. I would ask them what's right for you. It takes you a long time, to get there. But as far as relationships and my after my divorce, I went back to grad school, and so I was in grad school and became a nurse practitioner. And so when I found myself in the workplace, it was actually very good for me to it, it was it was the first career I really was allowed to have. And it felt kind of badass. It really did. Like, I have a career. Like, this is a
Yeah.
big deal. I'm like a big
Yeah.
girl with a big career. I can buy my own house. I can buy my own car.
Yeah.
Like, this rocks. So it was very empowering, like, to not have a man and just do me. And also have the confidence in dating, like, yeah, I'm not here because I need you to pay my bills. I'm not here because I need somebody to take care of me. We're good.
Mm.
And so it took that away from the equation and allowed me to really just focus on my kids and the excitement of having our own place and doing our own things and doing some little vacations together. And but I will say, as far as men in dating and everything, I've never remarried. I don't think that I ever will. I don't want to. I'm scared of it. I'm actually terrified of it, because it just doesn't feel, it doesn't speak to me. It scares me, and I am safer feeling like having my own space. I do cohabitate with someone that I'm in a relationship half of the week, and then I work half of the week somewhere else because I know that I have to have my own space. I can't just
Mm.
be, and that's okay. I think I try to just appreciate myself for that, know where I've been, understand that maybe the traditional relationship doesn't work for me because of some of the hurt and the pain, and to
Yeah.
force myself to be there would make me really anxious.
And what about boundaries?
Mm,
Talk to me about that.
that is a really good one. For me, probably the biggest boundary that I've ever learned is I do not have to tolerate from anyone else what I would not do. So if someone speaks to me and they say something really unkind to me, I think to myself, I do not need to tolerate that. I do not need to believe that because that would never come out of my mouth. And I will promptly remove myself from the situation.
Do you think that that sort of, allowing of yourself, like giving yourself the space and that accountability and the compassion is the thing that kind of drove you to write your book as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is. And writing the book has been a 2-year process. It has been hard. I did not expect for it to be so hard. It was painful at times. I had to hire a co-author to help me. She has been amazing. We have developed this incredible friendship over the last 2 years. And she knew nothing about the Mormon Church when we got started. And the way that we met was on TikTok. And I was on TikTok. She wasn't on my account, but I just started. I was so frustrated writing my story. I just decided I'm going to start telling about this magic underwear that I used to wear. And I'm just going to tell all the secrets. And I'm going to tell my secret name. And I'm just going to go on TikTok and do it. And I did. I just got on there and I go, yeah, were you Mormon? And what was your secret name? Because mine was Claudia and I'm not going to hell. And I just did that kind of stuff.
Wow.
My following grew to 10,000 in 3 weeks. And then they kicked me right off with no warning. I was just like out of there. So, I was just too out there, I guess, with like, I don't know if enough church people complained about it, but
Oh.
I shared a lot of private things about the church. And for those who are still in it, it's very personal to them. And so I'm sure there were a lot of complaints. But the beauty of that is that there was a guy on there that followed me when I started my new account. And he told me, he said, I want to pay for your book. I want to help you. And he said, and I have somebody in mind. And so I'd like to contract her to do your story. And then he started telling me how we're going to do it. He said, we're going to make this about Vegas. We're going to do this. He said, I grew up Mormon. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And I thought, hell no, I'm not going to have another man tell me what to do in my life. This is baloney. And
Yeah.
then that's what I told him. I just said, you know what? I don't feel good about this. I don't like you telling me what I'm going to put in my book. And it doesn't feel right. And also, I can pay for my own book. So I appreciate the gesture. Very nice, but this is not the way I want to go. And so, and he also said to me in that conversation, I don't think you're going to be with the guy you're with. He said, someday you're going to be with me. And I thought, here we go. This is
Oh
where
my
it always
God.
ends. There's an intent. There's something that they want.
Yes.
And I was like,
Yeah.
you disgusting rat. And so I told him, I said, there is absolutely not a chance in hell that we will ever be together. And so it really made him mad. The next day he called me, and he had already given me the name of this co-author. So the next day he called me and he said, you think you're so hot that I haven't dated women hotter than you? And I said, I didn't say that, but congratulations. And he said, in fact, I'm dating Sophia. And that's the co-author. And I said, wonderful.
Yeah.
So I got in
You.
touch with Sophia and I said, I don't want to use this guy. I'm willing to pay you directly. Do you still want to do it? I mean, I appreciate the fact that he helped us find each other. I know you guys are kind of involved in a relationship. I just want to keep that separate. And she said, what? I'm not involved in a relationship with him, in his dreams. And we both started cracking up. We were dying laughing. We're like, perfect example of how men play women. And
Mm.
you know what? So I just paid her the money and we cut him out, like just go away and quit messing with both of us. And it was awesome.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's how we found each other. And we did Zooms for the first year, and then we got together and started literally compiling it into the chapters and then perfecting it. And it's called A Piece of Me: Finding My Voice After Mormonism, Marriage, Medicine, and Men. And so I love it.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Like you're really one of those examples of someone who's turned their pain into a story that is um, just so powerful. Like it's so meaningful in its own sense
Thank
as
you.
well. Like so huge
Thank
props
you.
to you
That
for
means so
doing that.
much. That's my
Yeah.
hope. And I really feel like it will resonate with people. I really, really do. I think more so with women,
Yeah.
but I think anyone who reads it. I mean, it doesn't help that it's hot pink.
Yeah.
But I really think anyone reading it will be able to find a piece of themselves in it and learn first and foremost self-compassion and then compassion for the world around them.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Susie, thank you so much for being on Multispective and being vulnerable with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It is such a pleasure to meet you, and thank you again.
If you enjoyed the episode and would like to help support the show, please follow and subscribe. You can rate and review your feedback on any of our platforms listed in the description. I'd like to recognize our guests who are vulnerable and open to share their life experiences with us. Thank you for showing us we're human. Also, a thank you to our team who worked so hard behind the scenes to make it happen.
Lucas Piri.
Stefan Menzel.
The show would be nothing without you. I'm Jenica, host and writer of the show, and you're listening to Multispective.